Fallout Season 2 Episode 4 has Lucy fiending for a fix, but maybe she's not the only character struggling with a form of chemical dependence. Welcome to Lindsay's Fallout, bringing you the truth no matter how bad it hurts. This channel is a spoiler minefield. It is not advisable to watch this video until you are caught up to Season 2 Episode 4 of the TV show. Pause the video to read the comment policy, and when you're ready, prepare for liftoff. Y'all, after this episode, my heart is beating so fast. I'm full of so much adrenaline. Let's see if I can put together cohesive thoughts. We're definitely continuing our exploration of goodness versus obedience, but now we're getting to the heart of what causes obedience. Dependency. We're looking at how some people become dependent on powerful people, and how powerful people become dependent on having that power. Those quote-unquote bad writers even threw drug dependence into the mix. This show isn't portraying the ghoul as a drug addict, because doing drugs is so badass. They're trying to show that even when you believe you're such a lone wolf, you're so independent. Yeah, you play by your own rules. If you look, you're probably dependent on something. Nobody in the modern world is independent. If you live alone in a studio apartment, you're not collecting your own water, you're not growing your own food. You're dependent on a social system where it makes more sense to bypass the trials and tribulations of emotional connection, vulnerability, care, and connection, and instead focus on clever, shady ways to extract resources from people. What do you think the ghoul's cannibalism is supposed to represent? If you aren't meeting your needs through a consenting, informed community, you're feeding off of people in some way, even if it's just by depending on people who are making all that ass jerky for you. And I really like how this episode starts to explore how these power dynamics are happening, not just out in the wild, brutal wasteland, but in the vault too. They're happening whether there's violence or not. And it is not just the powerless dependent on the powerful. It is also the powerful dependent on power itself. What do we keep coming back to? Know what you follow, courier. Before I go deeper into the episode, I gotta unpack an abstraction, so this might be a huge mental leap for some of you. So strap in. Every standard issue Homo sapien comes with a self-preservation system, so that when we come into contact with a threat to our survival, alarm bells go off saying, fuck that, and we run the other way and live. And generally speaking, with exceptions like studies in epigenetics, etc., we aren't born knowing what we're supposed to be afraid of. Most of what we understand to be a threat is learned, which means under the right conditions, the very system that is there to protect us from harm can be rewired to protect the very forces that are harming us. This is why people stay in cults. This is why people stay in abusive relationships. But this kind of conditioning doesn't just define what we should be afraid of. It defines something much more disturbing, and hang with me because it might blow your mind. It defines what we are. We have a self-preservation system, but we program that system with what the self is. And that construction of the self, that's what ego actually is. It's the avatar. It's the character that you're playing in life. Most people believe that their fears are their authentic self, that if they steer in the direction that fear wants them to, that they're honoring themselves, that they're protecting their peace. But until they have investigated the root of that fear, they might just be obeying programming. We've seen over and over again how this chapter of the Brotherhood has been chronically conditioned with the idea that their value does not exceed their value to the Brotherhood. Their survival systems are conditioned to protect the Brotherhood before themselves. When Maximus put the gun on Quintus, his nervous system was signaling him like he was putting that gun against his own head. I feel deeply for Maximus in this scene because I've been in a situation like this 3 times. And while it wasn't as action-packed as this, it absolutely was life or death. And I learned what I care about more than my own life. If you watched my Benny and House video, that idea might sound a little familiar. I had to learn to disentangle my self-preservation system from protecting the interests of people who were overpowering me. Just like Wilzig warned Lucy that she was going to have to do. You don't want the same things once you become a different animal altogether. I even have a framework to cope with what Maximus is now up against here. I call this a pain tunnel. So I want to draw your attention to this line of dialogue. He says, I don't have a plan, you have plans. But out there you can't. I don't choose to do the things I have to do. They just keep happening. In other words, he doesn't know what he follows, courier. When we feel compelled to abandon the systems and beliefs that regulated our nervous systems, or that system is pulled out from under us for some other reason, there leaves a void. That void is essentially a power vacuum, which is why I found myself in this fucking mess 3 times, because as soon as I boot one sovereign leader, I find another one to take their place. If you've ever met anybody who just can't stay single and as soon as they break up, they're in another relationship, same basic idea happening under the hood. I call it a pain tunnel because it's dark, it's mysterious, you don't know where it's leading, you don't know what you're doing, without that voice whispering in your ear telling you what to do. The wasteland is essentially a pain tunnel. It's the same metaphor. What do you do when no one is telling you what to do? And most people will never face a pain pain tunnel. They will never leave the vault. They will never confront the wasteland because their self-preservation toolbox is calibrated to a lifestyle, a social system, a doctrine, a vault, a codex, whatever, and severing themselves from it feels like death. If any of this reminds you of the Matrix franchise, good, you're paying attention. Now some of you might be thinking, oh, thank God I'm not being conditioned like that. Are you sure? Because if you're an average, modernized, participant in capitalism type person, I might be able to prove to you that your perception of what yourself is warped. Consider for a moment Lucy's fingers. Ah, remember the old days when she had all 10? Most of us would probably say, yeah, her fingers are a part of her. When the ghoul cut off her finger, he cut off a part of herself, right? Okay, well what about the air? Is the air a part of Lucy too? Most of us instinctually would probably say, no, it's outside of her. The air is shared by everybody. Well, if her fingers are a part of her, and the air is not, then how come when you cut off Lucy's finger, she lives, but if you cut off her air, she dies? I hate to break it to you, y'all, but most of us were raised in a hyper-individualist cult that teaches us that things that are shared are not us. That taking care of the air or the planet is like extra credit and isn't absolutely necessary to preserve future generations as much as having a savings account is. If our self-preservation systems were calibrated properly, then we would get bigger anxiety attacks from pollution than we would from a missed bill. Hyper-independence is suicidal, and if we don't steer out of this self-terminating civilization, all our savings accounts are just gonna be pre-war money someday. I think what this line of dialogue from Maximus is pointing at is what he follows, what programming he internalized from living in a safe, happy, healthy community with loving parents. He values respecting and being honest with his elders. He values peace and safety and protecting the innocent. And he has no respect for bullying. If he's not consciously choosing these things, like the line suggests, that is still obeying. But that doesn't mean that the values are bad. Stepping out of obedience means you're examining your programming, your fears, your values. It means that you chose them proactively, instead of just reacting to the fear signals. There's a reason I keep going back to that Ulysses line. He says know what you follow. He doesn't say don't follow anything. In fact, if you expand the speech, he lists the options of what you might choose to follow, including nothing at all. The point is to know, to take responsibility for what you're carrying, instead of just following orders, like a good little courier. I didn't know it was in the box. Yeah, but delivering the box destroyed the divide, and you delivered it. If you think ignorance absolves you of responsibility or accountability, you're basically teaching the Quintuses of the world that they can get you to fucking do anything, as long as they keep you ignorant. Are you comfortable with that? So let's talk about guys like Quintus. I'm realizing to make these points, I'm gonna need some sort of shorthand. So let's say if Maximus is a bumbling bottom, Quintus is a toxic top. At the surface level, it might look preferable to be a toxic top, right? He's the boss. But no, it absolutely sucks to be either one. Neither feels safe, loved, or connected. Neither is truly cared about. Both are chasing unobtainable safety carrots that they will never reach, following survival programming that will never satisfy. You ever notice with dudes who are after power, it's just never quite enough power, is it? The toxic top might be a threat to the bumbling bottom, but they're also constantly under threat from other toxic tops. Pretty much everybody on the strip wanted Mr. House dead. That might be a way to survive, but it's not a way to live. That's why I'm a service top. Sup, ladies? Maximus's self-preservation system might be calibrated to protect the Brotherhood and Quintus, but Quintus's self-preservation system is calibrated to collect bumbling bottoms. Maximus is dependent on believing in something, and Quintus is dependent on being believed in. This is not leadership. This is weaponized codependence, and one of those weapons is the codex, the doctrine. Quintus treated Maximus so favorably because he could count on him to be his little bitch. In season 1, when Maximus said that he wanted what happened to Dane to happen, and asked if it was wrong, Quintus sure was quick to thump that codex down, wasn't he? Violence against another brother, that is definitely a no-no. The head loves the codex if it can use it to control the sword, but not so much when it's gonna control him, huh? In season 2, when all those elders saw those shiny fusion cores, all of a sudden the codex was open to interpretation, but not when the lives of ghoul children were on the line. Not only was that not open for interpretation, but now all of a sudden killing a fellow brother is okay too. They sure do play fast and loose with how seriously we're supposed to take this particular document, don't they? The elders are all toxic tops, and the codex is there to control bumbling bottoms. That's it. And once Maximus proved that he's capable of thinking outside the codex, he was no longer an asset, he was a liability, and he had to go. If Quintus couldn't control him with the codex, there was no need for him to stick to it anymore. I mean, think about it. What, he was so mad at Maximus for defying the codex that he defied the codex? The codex was never the issue. Being out of Quintus's control was the issue. Ooh, but before we move on, there are a couple concepts here that I didn't make up, but I've mentioned before in other episodes, and since I love coming back to stuff, I can't resist. So, the codex says don't hurt another brother, so the elders, they're not gonna like declare war on the Commonwealth, but long story short, they're basically gonna provoke the Commonwealth into fighting them. Remember I told you guys about reactive abuse. If you're in a position where you wanna get at somebody, but for social, political reasons, you can't do it directly, poke them in the side until they start it. If you're like more of a political science major type person, because reactive abuse is a, psychology trauma healing thing, but if there's like a warfare terminology that's more appropriate, but it's the same basic principle. Number 2, we have another extinction burst. Quintus relies on particular manipulation techniques to get Maximus to do what he wants, and when he was losing control of Maximus, what did he do? He called him son. He took the old methods and he turned the volume up on them. And it is absolutely genius for them to intercut this story with a story about drug addiction, because that is how to think about guys like Quintus. Toxic tops and bumbling bottoms are trauma bonded, and that bond is a neurochemical addiction. So if any of you have ever struggled with substance addiction, first of all, me too. There's no shame. It's really hard. You're up against your brain, and anyone who has ever judged you doesn't fucking get it. Okay, but you don't do the thing forever because it feels so good and you gotta feel good all the time. It changes your baseline. It changes what you neurochemically need to function and makes you really fucking sick when you quit a lot of the time. So your brain, that place where your thoughts come from, will send you thoughts that will justify indulging the addiction. And poor Lucy, she has no experience with this. She's just given that addiction full teleprompter control. And I'm telling you, bumbling bottom and toxic top behavior does the same fucking thing. Remember not that long ago when I said I was a lore break apologist? Like I would turn my mind inside out trying to figure out how to make things make sense? I made a joke that might be why I end up in so many abusive relationships. Yeah, this is literally what I'm talking about. All this brain energy that you're seeing in all these videos, I would devote that to making the substance or the relationship make sense. Maximus is struggling to fire on Quintus because of a neurochemical addiction. Quintus doubles down on his manipulation tactics because of a neurochemical addiction. This is not an excuse. It's a karma hit. If you don't allow yourself to feel bad at all for an addiction, then you'll never quit. The trick is to stay out of the gravitational pull of shame. You can disapprove of your own behavior without hating yourself. It just takes practice. And you need the antidote. The antidote to addiction is connection. You can Google after me. You'll find piles of science backing me up on this particular topic. Maximus needs connection. Quintus needs connection. And the ghoul just says take more drugs because he's had 200 years without connection because stupid Lucy's don't believe you when you say tunics are bad and run off with the Legion while you're nursing your rad scorpion stings. I'm not gonna lie, I really think they should be using the word chems by now. Like, I was fine with the drugs thing at first. Like how they started with mutant before they introduced us to ghoul. We could handle learning what a ghoul was, and we can handle learning what a chem is. I don't know, maybe they just really enjoy hearing the way Walton Goggins says drugs.
Do more drugs.
This is the part where I remind you to like and subscribe. Maybe I'll always cut to this Deathclaw clip when I do this. I've always been tickled by the funky Deathclaw strut. But the wasteland is not the only void of connection. The vault has its own set of bumbling bottoms and toxic tops, but the situation is more subtextual, more passive-aggressive. Reminds me of a great line from the movie Ghost World. He says, "People still hate each other, we just learned how to hide it better." And once again, I feel so bad for the right-wingers and wokeophobes because y'all, this is your moment, because we are making fun of liberals again. Betty's like, we have real problems, and you are pooling resources into your inbreeding support group? Y'all, I used to be a conservative. This is the kind of shit they would complain about. All this tribalism, all these people making up categories of victimization, all these they-thems, and they're pulling resources away from the things that really matter, like military and defense, because they're privileged and bored, and they don't understand that the only reason they have all this wiggle room to make up all this bullshit is because of everybody making their ass jerky for them. I can tell you what they're not getting, though. Reg really is disempowered. All the Vault citizens who aren't in on the 31 experiment are really disempowered. Even if all a person wants is agency and autonomy, just basic respect, just to exist in the room, if they will get none of that unless they have power, they will go for power. Remember how I said Maximus and I, we would love to just be safe and loved, but if that's not available, purpose will have to do, right? Reg doesn't have access to any purpose. Betty thought that if she got Reg to start a group to talk about feelings, about shame and uselessness, that she could get him out of the way, keep him busy. And what do you know? In a community of disempowered people, feelings of shame drew a crowd. Show me a community that never fights? I'll show you people who are fighting themselves. When our complaints are suppressed, we turn that shit inward. Remember how I said reality always wins? If oppression is real, it will find a way out. Reg doesn't know why he feels oppressed. Reg doesn't know about the forces at work that made him vote against himself. He's working with what he's got. Okay, let's recap some concepts. What the brain really wants is connection, to feel cared about. And it's impossible to feel connected if you're suppressing yourself because nobody's met you. Without that, we become dependent on substance grievances and toxic coping mechanisms, and your brain will turn itself inside out to justify what you have to do to meet that unmet need. And another callback to my season premiere video. Norm exhausted the options presented to him by the Vault, so he introduced chaos. I pointed out that it doesn't matter how logical you are if you're only rearranging the pieces that power made available to you. The oppression that Reg is feeling is very real, and when his brain rearranged the pieces provided to him by power, the inbreeding support group is the best he could come up with. It's a broad enough shared experience that makes people feel shitty enough that he could get the numbers just to feel like he fucking exists, just to feel like he matters at all. This isn't just about his feelings, it's about his dignity. If you don't know the difference between getting your feelings hurt and being oppressed, then you haven't experienced both. And if you really do feel oppressed, and that marginalized groups have more power than you do, more than likely that's because the forces that are oppressing you brainwashed you against starting a group of your own. Because by definition, a marginalized group cannot oppress you. That would make it not marginalized. It breaks my heart knowing how many wokophobes are autistic people who are genuinely oppressed, whose feelings of marginalization are 100% real, but they see groupthink and tribalism as the enemy, and they see claiming neurodivergence as victimhood, so they will never claim their right to be treated better. Stop being dictionary thumpers and learn that you have the right to make up words. If autistic people would just join forces, we would live in such an efficient world. So let's give Reg a break. I mean, I think we all know who the real problem is here. Stephanie. Stephanie is a covert narcissist. Now, it may not seem that covert looking at it from the vantage point of the TV show, but I really want to impress upon you how good these people are at fooling you in real life. I mean, it's easy to forget that first opening sequence, episode 1, Stephanie was Lucy's best friend. Has Stephanie expressed any worry about what happened to Lucy whatsoever? Has anyone in this vault expressed any concern for the well-being of Hank or Lucy? No, because this is not a community of care and connection. It is a community of codependence. Now, there's a million reasons why I normally avoid the word narcissist these days. For one, it is in the DSM-5. It has diagnostic criteria. That means there's institutional gatekeeping around that term. Not to mention that criteria once had me convinced that I was a narcissist because I came down with a bad case of dignity and self-respect in a social environment filled with Chets and Stephanies. Anyway, you can read all about my opinions about the narcissist criteria on my Substack, but the point is, these are the most dangerous people that you are likely to meet in your day-to-day life, and it is very important that individuals without credentials feel empowered to call out these patterns. So I call these people manipulators now. Or I guess now we can call her a covert toxic top. And the reason they're so dangerous is because their reputation is everything. And you might know that on a surface level. Like, yeah, people who care about what other people think suck, right? But if someone's reputation is their highest priority, then they will have a great reputation. So if you call them on their shit, or feel moved to challenge them in any way, you will have no social support. Everyone will be on their side. They have a better reputation than you. They worked really hard on that. You'll get screwed over on both sides. People with more power than this person won't help you, and people with less power than this person won't help you. The people with more power won't see this person as a problem. This person has been kissing their ass. From their perspective, this person is really nice, and you're just making shit up. The way that we see Stephanie would baffle Lucy. That is not the version of Stephanie that she knew, and she's gonna feel like a better person for trusting her own judgment instead of letting other people tell her who this person is. And the reason people with less power won't help is, for one, they have less power. Even if they believe you, they're gonna feel powerless to do anything about it. And worst case scenario, remember what Morpheus told Neo. Anyone who is still plugged into the Matrix will fight to defend that system. They won't look at your willingness to take on the dragon as bravery. They won't want to be associated with you because you're challenging a system that they are dependent on to feel safe. Gonna warn you right now, if you think, we watch all these movies and hear all these stories about these brave people and everybody admires the brave people, they don't admire brave people in real life. I'm sorry. They want to go back to bed. And so when you're dealing with a person like this, you're gonna find yourself corralled. When you follow your natural instinct to not be rude, to not rub people the wrong way, to not make a fuss, next thing you know, you're taking care of somebody else's baby, and there's no way out. Imagine how the Vault would react if Chet was like, nope, I am not taking care of this child anymore. I don't want to live in this unit anymore. Whose side do you think they would take? Stephanie just lost her husband and she's alone with this baby, and Chet let her trust him and believe in him, and then he abandoned her? Oh yeah, she's got him by the balls. And there's nothing definitive that he has been able to point to say no, she did a bad thing, because these people operate between the lines, under the threshold of that which is socially reprehensible. The most excruciating thing about recognizing these threats in advance is that if you take action in advance to anyone else, you started it. Never forget that. That is why it is so significant that Chet has collected evidence. He found her ID. I don't know if he grasps that that means that she was alive before the war, but it doesn't mean nothing. Maybe Stephanie was the devil in the snow after all. I feel like Stephanie's conversation with Betty pretty much lays bare everything we've been talking about. We know now that she's from Canada, so she was probably much more strongly impacted by the resource wars. Based on how the episode started and ended, they might be suggesting she has experience with death claws. Maybe that's what she's running from in that trailer. So without a doubt, she learned that safety comes from power. So in my opinion, here's the big difference between a toxic top and a normal person. I think most of us can vibe with the idea of self-defense. Like if somebody's coming after you with a knife and you hurt them in a scuffle defending yourself, you weren't the aggressor, you didn't start it. But for these people, it's like they're in a perpetual state of the world started it. There is no line that Stephanie does not feel entitled to cross if it preserves her survival without denting her reputation, because she needs that reputation for her survival. She straight up says this is about survival. Betty, you're from Solvang. You don't know how bad things can get. In her head, she's the player. Everyone else is an NPC. She's the head, they're the sword. If she convinces people to do what she wants them to do, that's just doing life correctly. Anyone who is out of her control is out of control, and she's entitled to subdue them any way she sees fit. I may have underestimated Betty, because Betty's not responding to this like a threatened manipulator. She really seems to be trying to level with her. I'm assuming she's used to Stephanie kind of kissing her ass, but without the oversight of Voltec, Stephanie doesn't benefit from playing nice with her anymore. But don't forget what I said about Quintus and what I said the last time we talked about Stephanie. She's still not free. She'll never feel powerful enough. This road doesn't go anywhere. She's putting herself through all of this thinking that one day she'll feel safe, but until you feel connected to other people, you will never feel safe. And I honestly think that's our only hope to get these people to stop. What they really want to do is what works, and this never works. But we'll never be able to explain it to them if they're hyper-vigilant and don't trust us. So the next time you want to tell one of these people to go to hell, the good news is they're working overtime to create their own just fine. And what do y'all think? Do you think Stephanie killed the Raiders? There was a lot of emphasis on her conversation with Norm after he talked about killing the Raiders, but I think if she wanted to frame him, then that conversation would be a huge liability. She wouldn't be okay with being seen talking to him unless she was trying to manipulate him into doing it, and then he didn't and she took matters into her own hands. I don't know, we'll find out. What do y'all think? And to tie this all together, folks, I got bad news. If you are lonely, and you're filling that hole with some sort of dependence, as a bumbling bottom, as a toxic top, with substances, with video games, with doom scrolling, with well-intentioned activism, with a savior complex, whatever, you can't just hang on to those things and go, oh, I'll let them go once real love comes. Real love won't come because you're not making room for it. You have to examine your shit. You have to enter your pain tunnel. You have to leave the vault and enter the wasteland. You have to embrace chaos. You have to let in something new. And there is no way to do that without making yourself vulnerable, without looking like a jackass, without risking getting hurt again. Trust me, I've done this 3 times. Remember what we said. If you have to choose between a hard thing and a miserable thing, choose the hard thing. They both suck. And if you choose the miserable thing, if you choose the devil you know, then all you will ever know is devils. Free your mind, Neo, jump off the building. Don't forget, Neo face planted the first time, but he was never gonna learn to fly until he accepted the free fall. And free falling is easy. Once Norm had no other option than to let go, allowing the chaos was a piece of cake. Don't spend your life at war with yourself, y'all, cause war, you know, continues to be invariant. And now we begin the community section. So if the video is a couple weeks old, this stuff's probably gonna be out of date and you can probably skip it. Thanks to everybody who participated last week with the Nuka Grape Sunset Sarsaparilla comment thing. Even people who refuse to say it because they don't really feel that way. In fact, maybe even especially those people. You don't want to say something that's not true just because somebody told you to say it. I respect that. Of course, one person is like, I know you're only doing this for engagement. Excuse me, if I was doing that for engagement, I would have said that. If I was willing to be shady to gain the algorithm, I would be a lot more successful. The only metric that I was after was retention. I want to know who watches to the end of the video. And frankly, I didn't expect so many people to say it. You guys are awesome. But y'all, I'm hitting a crossroads and I need your help or something. Another settlement needs your help because I'm having a blast doing this. I will never run out of Fallout shit to talk about, but it's getting to a point where I'm going to have to choose if I'm going to keep working on these videos or if I'm going to take on client work. And as of now, one of those things makes me money and the other one does not. We need to have a brainstorming sesh. So even though I'm terrified, let's do a live stream this Saturday, 4 p.m. Pacific. Expect technical mishaps. I'm gonna be figuring it out as I go, but y'all are Bethesda fans, you're used to that. Let's talk about ways that I can shake some change out of this channel without being obnoxious. Because if there's a way for me to figure out how to invest more time into this channel, I want to do it. Y'all are awesome. I can't believe I said I may be a woman, but I'm not a pussy, and no one gave me shit for it. I think I found my people. Other than that, like and subscribe, and I'll see you when I see you.
If you have to go out, take a gun and a lamp. 'Cause everybody knows there's a devil in camp.